The Israelite Nation, Worldwide Ministries.
You have to be part of the family. This is why what I'm putting forward today is to encourage all those people who are engaged in Christianity to stop. All those people who are engaging in Judaism to stop. All those people who are engaged in the Hebrew Israelitism, if there's such a word, maybe I just made that, to stop. All those who are Freemasons that are engaging in that foolishness, to stop. If they want to know what's in the Bible, truly, and come and let us share with them the truth. Otherwise, they're just getting an imitation. Unless you know the recipe, you can never make the dish. Don't matter how good a cook you are. You see what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And what you're making may be better for your taste buds, for your palate. But for what is being offered in the menu, you'll never get it. Never. Because you did not follow the recipe. This is exactly how it is with the scriptures. In order to learn about the scriptures, there's certain experiences that you have to attain through obedience to the instructions thereof. Again, if you don't plug a kettle in, it's never going to boil. I don't care how hot you are. You have to plug it into an outlet so that the water, or start a fire somehow. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying? And it's the same thing with the Holy Scriptures. Okay. And having the book is one thing. Allowing that book to reveal its holiness is another. That's where the Israelite comes in. And I know there are lots of people who claim to be, but the fact that they, too, can't understand it tells me who's who. But it creates another issue, and this is one that I like to address in the process. The issue of racism. Now, I personally don't believe that there is such a thing, but in order to communicate effectively, I have to use the word. Okay. Because when I read the book, I don't see any race. Right? What these, I guess I could call them enemies, have done, enemies of the Bible, is laid the foundation for racism to be established. Why? Okay, maybe this is not a good example, but, if I wanted to be as good as you and your academic and intellectual aspiration, okay, right, I would have to get to know you and get you to tutor me so that I could become as good as you, almost as good or even better. Because if you tutor me and I become better than you, then I would have, something to say about your tutoring, your teaching ability. But what if I wanted to do it by myself? Even though I know deep down in my psyche that I cannot attain to your level. But yet I'm trying, year after year after year. There's something to be said about that mentally doesn't compute. It expresses a concept of mental illness. If I'm trying to be like somebody, cannot attain it because of the mental attributes, physical attributes, or a combination thereof. But yet I keep pushing and pushing. And then when I get so mad that I can't be like you, I started heaping insults on you. Who is this Taya? Who does she think she is? And da-da-da, and I find everything negative about you. And that allows me to put you in a place where I am higher, even though I haven't attained that height.
Okay. So I think just to clarify for myself and maybe for our viewers as well. So in wanting to be Israelites and wanting to be that people, but not being able to learn from them, or maybe not choosing to learn from them, the only option then, as you said, is to heap insults on them and to say that they are less than. And that is essentially the development of racism.
That's the development of racism and the introduction of identity theft, the real identity theft. Even though it cannot happen, right? Because it is not, you have to be chosen by the God of Israel. Then you have to qualify for service to become his servant, his witness, right? And then you could consider teaching from the book. but you have to be in his royal family as an Israelite. You can't be a Christian. You can't practice Judaism. You can't practice Hebrew Israelitism. Those things do not work. So it brings to mind then a mental disorder. Or one can say they just didn't know the prescription. They did not understand that this book has hidden secrets, hidden spiritual secrets that they cannot grasp. The logical thing would be to call an Israelite and say, help me. No, they haven't done that. They developed their own method of lying to the public, whether it's on a Saturday or on a Sunday, and pursuing that power, if you will, without any concern for the people that they're trampling on, for their culture, even though they cannot understand what the heck they're doing. And in the process, they make millions. Okay. Because the people are all dumb and stupid and they believe them. And some of our own people who got into trouble in the first place for following them, continue to follow them every Sunday.
And so you gave the example of a home that is left vacant and somebody else comes and takes it and then claims it as their own and assumes that it's theirs because of the time they spent in it. Right. And so if we're putting that to the real world scenario, we were in slavery in the time, and that's why our house was vacant, because we weren't there to claim that position. Is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, and so then that would be then perfect time for them to come in, use the book however they see fit for their own agenda, conduct and commit the identity theft, like you were saying, because we were in slavery.
If they're trash, if they're thugs, I don't know. I don't say that they can't use the property, but be respectful of somebody else's property. They have to recognize that there's a law. As a matter of fact, there are two laws. There's the royal law, which we have, and there's the common law, which the rest of the world has. Because there are two different types of people on the face of the earth. There's Abraham's seed, which is the Israelite nation, and then there's the serpent's seed, which is the rest of the world. So unless you are driven by some deceptive means, I'm trying to be nice, to do what you're doing, yes, then they will take control and commit whatever transgression they want to commit in the name of ownership. But why is it that when we came back, we still have to pay the taxes? We got to pay the taxes for the last 400 years. You see what I'm saying? It is not like they say, well, you know what? This is Taya's property. I'm going to pay the light bill. I'm going to mow the lawn. I'm going to make sure the yard is properly kept. And I'll pay the taxes when the bill shows up. They kept the bill for you. They kept the light bill for you. I'm surprised they kept the lights on. Right? So that's the issue that we face today, where people have assumed our identity under a different name, a fictitious name, and have the world believing that they are the ones in control, yet nobody outside our gates understand what is written in that book. And the reason why is that narrative is a spiritual narrative between a father and his children concerning the covenant, that special agreement, spiritual agreement between the God of Israel, who created heaven and earth, and his people. And nobody gets that. They just assume, well, I'm calling on Jesus or whatever, or I'm calling on Yeshua or whatever, or some people call themselves rabbis. And no, it doesn't work like that. And just because you change every J to a Y, don't mean any difference. It's illegal. You still can't get it because you do not change what you cannot understand.
So is there any other spiritual or historical context that you think we would need to be able to then discuss solutions and better understand, just the current climate we're in right now? Any further spiritual or historical context?
Definitely. First of all, I think that the entire world needs to recognize what we are seeing today. They need to understand that we're dealing with a spiritual book which contains a spiritual narrative between a father and his son, they have to respect that. Disrespect begins within the individual who is perpetrating that behavior. In other words, for me to disrespect you, I have to first disrespect myself. A lot of people don't understand that in order for them to speak bad about somebody without evidence, they have to show that it's coming from within by the very nature of the fact that they are doing it. Because they're not being introspective. They're too busy throwing insults and at somebody else. They're not seeing what's within. This is, if you look around at the rest of the world and look at the historical perspective, you will see what transpired over the last 400 years and even before then. Why is it that there was no Christianity until the 16th century? There's nothing named Christianity or nothing named Christian until the late 16th century. Yet everybody is a Christian. Why is it that there's nothing named Judaism until the late 17th century? As a matter of fact, there was no ism until the 18th century. So how is it, and keeping in that vein, there's no Hebrew Israelite until 2 weeks ago. So if these things are just yesterday's invention, how is it that they've now become so dominant? And is it that the world was deceived? And if that's the case, who is the deceiver? And how can we avoid his deception? These are questions that the individual would have to answer, right? But all of these answers are in the book. It is just a matter of, do you really want to sit down and pay attention to the teaching of a qualified Israelite? Or do you want to take it upon yourself to say, well, gee, I could make this, I could do this, I could change the Y, the J's into Y's. Like that is childish behavior. And it calls to mind the spirit that's driving that type of behavior. For example, when you see something or when you hear something, there's a process that occurs internally. Your eyes activate your spirit. Your spirit then activates your brain, and your brain then interprets so that you can have an opinion or you can have an understanding of what it is you're seeing or hearing. If your spirit is flawed, everything else is flawed. Now, one will say, well, how do you know? I think Jesus said it a long time ago, by their fruits you shall know them. So I will look at your behavior and see exactly what you're doing. Then I looked in the scriptures and see how that compares with the instructions thereof. And then I make my decision. Keeping in mind that that is my authority. So when people misuse and abuse they misuse, they can't abuse it, the words that are in the Bible, it is up to us as Israelites to call them out on it, because we have a right to protect our national integrity and our national covenant and our national heritage as Israelites. We do not have to accept that callous behavior. We have a right to call them on it, or at least to make it known that what they're doing is wrong. It is wrong culturally, it's wrong legally, both under the common law, which is the Canadian law, British law, American law, or the royal law, which is Israelite law. And we have entered into a phase or an era of judgment, and they will have to pay sooner or later if our judge so desires. So they have to be aware of these things, and it's up to us to bring that to their attention by, podcasts like yours.
And so essentially our role as Israelites is to be teachers to everybody else and teach them the truth and teach them what's in the Bible so that they can actually understand it. Because, of course, without us, they wouldn't be able to. Two
forms of teaching, correct. There is teaching by example, and then teaching from the book itself. So when they see what you eat, how you dress, how you conduct yourself, then they would say, wow. And then, of course, they see your prosperity, right? And, sometimes you go through very hideous experiences or difficult times, but yet we we walk away from it. And that in itself is good because others are not under the same umbrella that we carry or that we're under. And so what I'm suggesting here is that there's two ways you can learn. You can learn from our behavior as the leaders, and you can learn from our teaching from the book itself. You have to qualify